My name is Riley Tatum. I'm 27 years old. And I work as a teaching assistant at Lowndes County Elementary in Valdosta, Georgia. But this story doesn't start in a classroom. It starts on a Thursday night in my living room, with a pile of baby clothes and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Buzzing, not the gentle kind, not the single pulse of a goodnight text or a weather alert. This was rapid fire, one vibration bleeding into the next, like a heartbeat speeding up. And I sat there on the couch with my daughters, Onacy in my lap, and my fingers still warm from the dryer. And I didn't pick it up right away. I should have. But Emma's lavender sleep sack was tangled in the leg of a pair of tiny pants, and I was working the knot loose. And the TV was on low. Some home renovation show I wasn't watching. And the clock on the wall kept ticking the way it always did when the house was empty of everyone except me. Nate was out. Third time that week. Mrs. Hendricks needed her brake pads looked at, he'd said, grabbing his jacket off the hook by the door. Kissed my forehead. Didn't kiss Emma. But Emma was already asleep in her crib. The baby monitor app glowing green on my phone screen. Steady as a pulse. The buzzing again. 5607. I put the Onacy down and picked up the phone. Instagram. Notifications stacked so tight they blurred together. College friends I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. A woman from book club. My co-worker Mrs. Patterson, Nate's old baseball buddy from Valdosta High. All tagging me in the same post. One Instagram story, I tapped it. White sheets rumpled. A man's bare back, shoulders broad. And on the right one, a tribal tattoo I'd traced with my fingertip on our wedding night. And 100 nights after. I'd slept beside that tattoo for 5 years. Beside it now, blonde hair fanned across a pillow. A wine bottle on the nightstand. 2 glasses, one with lipstick on the rim. The caption read, "His mine now. You were just the replacement." Posted by Brooke Hessler Holmes. My thumb locked on the screen, knuckles white. The Onacy slid off my lap to the floor. And I didn't register it falling. Didn't register anything. Except the fact that my lungs had stopped. Not breathing in, not breathing out. Just stopped, like they'd forgotten the mechanics of it. Like the air in the room had turned solid. 3 seconds, maybe 5, maybe 30. I couldn't tell you. Then my thumb moved. Screenshot again. Screen record. I didn't decide to do it. My hands decided. I screenshot everything. Grocery lists, lesson plans, text messages about nothing. I'd been doing it since college. That stupid habit saved me. My hands shook. But something behind my ribs went cold and stayed cold. A temperature I didn't know I carried. I scrolled down. The comments were already piling in. Oh my god, wait, is that bro? Delete this. But Brooke didn't delete it. Brooke left it up like a billboard. The whole town was watching. I looked at the laundry basket. Emma's bare Onacy sat on top. The one Nate bought last week at Target. For my little princess, he'd said. Holding it up. So Emma could grab at it with her fat hands. Same week, same man. Same week he was in that bed. I put the phone down, picked it up, put it down. I didn't know who to call. I ran through names in my head. And came up empty every time. Because the truth was, I didn't have anyone. Not anymore. Nate was my person. Nate and Emma and Sunday service at First Baptist. And that was the whole list. Headlights swept across the living room curtains. I heard the truck door slam. Boots on the gravel walk, the front door handle turning. I looked down at my phone. Screenshot saved. And I pressed the screen dark. And flipped it face down on the cushion. I picked up the Onacy from the floor and folded it. Smooth the arms, tuck the legs, stack. He came in smelling like the shop. Like oil and the cold pine air freshener he keeps clipped to his visor. Hey darling, I'm back. Hey, I said. I didn't look up. Mrs. Hendricks, good, yeah, she's all set. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and walked to the kitchen for water. Normal, everything normal. I kept folding my hands, steady now. Steady as the green light of the baby monitor, pulsing on the couch beside me. I didn't sleep that night. Not 1 minute. I lay on my side facing the wall and listened to Nate breathe and counted the hours. By the train that runs through Valdosta. At midnight and again at 4:15. By morning. I had dark circles that could have passed for bruises. But Emma had been fussy with a tooth coming in. So the excuse wrote itself. Nate sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, scrolling his phone with his free hand. He kissed Emma's forehead, where she sat in her high chair. Cheerios stuck to her chin. Got her open the shop early. You good? I watched him. Really watched for the first time. The way his eyes moved across his phone screen. No flinch, no tightness. Either he didn't know Brooke had posted it, or he'd known for hours. And his face was that good. Nate, I kept my voice flat. Did you see anything on Instagram last night? He didn't look up. Babe, you know I don't mess with Instagram. Somebody tagged me in a post. Brooke Kessler's account. The cereal spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down slow, deliberate. The way you set down something breakable. What Brooke post, you tell me? He looked at me then. And the thing that moved behind his eyes wasn't guilt. It was math. He was running options. Choosing a story. The way you'd flip through shirts in a closet. Looking for the right one. Darling, his voice dropped half a register. The warm one, the one that worked on the church ladies. And the old women whose cars he fixed for free. Brooke Kessler has been causing drama since 11th grade. That's just who she is. Don't pay her any mind. The man in the photo had a tribal tattoo on his right shoulder. Quiet, the refrigerator hummed. Emma smacked her tray. He stood up. I don't know what she posted, but I know she's unstable. Always has been ever since we broke up back in school. She's obsessed. You really shouldn't believe anything that woman puts online. He grabbed his jacket at the door. He paused, turned back. Oh, the paperwork on the counter. I need you to sign it when you get a chance. Just an insurance authorization for the land parcel. Then he was gone. Truck starting, gravel gone. I walked to the counter. I picked up the papers. They weren't insurance forms. The header read listing agreement. The broker's name printed in clean serif font. Across the top. Brooke Kessler. Brooke Kessler Homes. Licensed real estate agent, Valdosta, Georgia. Nate was selling the family land. Through the woman he was sleeping with. And he'd asked me to sign it like it was nothing. I set the papers down. I put Emma in the car seat and drove to Walmart. Because we needed formula and diapers. And I needed to move. Needed the car around me. Needed the road under the tires. At the checkout I saw them. 2 women from the Wednesday Bible study. Standing near the greeting cards. And when they saw me, they leaned in together. And their mouths moved and their eyes slid sideways. The cashier, a girl barely 20, scanned my formula without looking at me. No small talk. No how's that baby doing. Just the beep of the scanner and the silence. And everywhere the feeling of being looked at and not seen. At school I made it to second period before Mrs. Patterson caught me in the hallway. She put her hand on my arm and tilted her head. The tilt people do when they want to look concerned. Riley, honey, I saw that post last night. She squeezed my wrist. Are you okay? But her voice wasn't worry. It was appetite. She wanted the story. She wanted to carry it from the teacher's lounge to the parking lot to her kitchen table. I'm fine, I said. Thanks for asking. I walked into the staff bathroom and locked the door and sat on the closed toilet and cried for the first time. Not loud, just tears running down my face. While the fluorescent light buzzed overhead. I wasn't crying about Nate. Not yet. I was crying because I had no one to call. No mother who'd answer without judgment. No sister, no best friend. My world had shrunk down to a house and a church. And a man who was lying about both. When I came out, there was a business card. Wedged under the bathroom door. Cream-colored simple print, second chances consignment. Darla Quinn proprietor. And handwritten on the back in blue. When you need to talk, come by. I stood where you're standing. 7 years ago I didn't know Darla Quinn. I'd seen her shop on Main Street. Walked past the window. Full of vintage dresses and second-hand furniture. But she was the only person that day who didn't ask if I was okay. In a voice that really meant tell me everything. I put the card in my back pocket. That night after Emma went down, Nate stepped into the shower. The water started and I counted in my head. 7 minutes. That was his routine. 7 minutes of hot water. While he sang under his breath. Some Zac Brown song he never got the words right to. His phone sat on the nightstand face down. Always face down now. And I couldn't say when that habit had started. Whether it was weeks or months. Whether I'd been too tired to notice or too afraid. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The lock screen lit up with a notification. And I could read it from where I stood 3 feet away. In the dim bedroom. My bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. One message from a contact saved as B. She saw it, good. Now she knows where she stands. Come over tonight. I picked up my own phone, aimed the camera. Took a photo of his screen. Clean, legal, no passwords cracked, no privacy violated. Just a picture of a text. Anyone could see from across the room. Then I opened the baby monitor app. The one Nate had insisted we both install. When Emma was born. The one he'd told me to delete last week. Because it killed the battery. I'd forgotten. I forget things. Too many grocery lists and lesson plans. And diaper counts. To keep track of what I've deleted and what I haven't. I scrolled back through the audio history. The first recording was from a Tuesday. 2 months earlier. Nate home alone with Emma. I'd been at a staff meeting. The audio was quiet at first. Just Emma cooing and the sound of something on TV. Then Nate's voice, low and sweet. The voice he used to use when we were dating. And he'd call me on his lunch break. Just to hear how my day went. Hey baby, yeah, she just went down. We've got all night. He wasn't talking to Emma. I kept scrolling. Wednesday, Thursday, the next Tuesday, over and over. Every night I left him alone with our daughter. He was on the phone with her, laughing. Whispering, calling her baby and sweetheart and mine. And under. His voice sometimes so faint you had to strain for it. Sometimes loud enough to cut through everything. Emma crying and not being picked up. Crying and being ignored. Yeah, she's just fussy. Ignore it. So where were we? I sat on the edge of the bed. The monitor app still open. The waveforms still scrolling. My daughter's cries stored in a phone. And neat little audio files. Like voicemails from a world I didn't know existed. Until right now. The water shut off, the shower curtains scraped the rod. I closed the app. Set my phone on my nightstand. Screen down and got under the covers. Eyes closed, breathing even the performance of sleep. He came out in a cloud of steam in Irish spring. Boxers and a t-shirt. He picked up his phone, checked it, typed something. I heard the soft tap of his thumbs. Then he slid into bed beside me. His hand found my shoulder. His lips pressed against the back of my neck. Night, darling. I didn't move. His arm settled across my waist, heavy and warm. The same arm that had held me on our front porch. The night he proposed. The arm I'd fallen asleep under 1,000 times. Believing it meant safe. I kept my eyes shut and I listened to him fall asleep. And I held my phone against my chest under the blanket. The way you'd hold a weapon. You're not ready to use yet. The green light of the baby monitor. Pulsed on the nightstand. Still recording. I hadn't turned it off. I wasn't going to. I carried Darla Quinn's business card in my back pocket. For 3 days before I walked through her door. 3 days of folding Nate's laundry. And cooking Nate's dinner. And laughing at Nate's jokes. About a customer who'd driven in with duct tape. Holding his bumper on. 3 days of lying beside him at night. With my phone pressed to my ribs. The monitor app running his voice on it. Talking to a woman who wasn't me. While our daughter cried in the background. On Monday I told Mrs. Patterson I had a dentist appointment. During lunch I drove downtown past the courthouse. Past the Dollar General. Past First Baptist. With its white steeple cutting the January sky. And I parked in front of a narrow storefront. With a hand-painted sign that read, Second Chances Consignment. A bell jangled when I pushed the door open. The air inside was different from outside. Heavier, warmer. Carrying the smell of beeswax. Candles and old cedar. And fabric that had lived in other people's closets. Vintage dresses hung on a rolling rack near the window. A shelf of leather handbags lined the far wall. Every item had a handwritten price tag. Tied with kitchen string. A ceiling fan turned slow overhead. Patsy Cline on a clock radio behind the register. And behind the counter a woman with salt and pepper hair twisted up in a clip. Reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Stitching a button back onto a wool coat. She didn't look up. Riley Tatum, I figured you'd come. I sat down on the stool across from her. I didn't know where to start, so I didn't start anywhere. I just sat there with my hands in my lap. While she finished the button. Snipped the thread with her teeth. And set the coat aside. Darla Quinn. Poured 2 glasses of sweet tea from a pitcher. She kept on a mini fridge behind the counter. Ice cracked and shifted as she set one in front of me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't tilt her head. She picked up her own glass and drank. And then she started talking. 7 years ago, she said. My husband Rick walked out of this marriage. And into the arms of our own attorney secretary. You might remember Rick. Head usher at First Baptist for 11 years. Coached Little League. Organized the 4th of July cookout. Every single summer. I nodded. I'd seen his name on a plaque in the church lobby. When I told people what he'd done. You know what happened. The congregation sat me down and told me. I was the problem. Darla, you're being divisive. Darla, can't you just forgive and move on? Pastor Jenkins pulled me aside after service and said. I needed to find it in my heart to. Let go. Rick stayed in the church. Kept his seat, kept his friends. I got shown the door. I looked at her. But you were right. Rick was the one who cheated. Of course I was right. Darla set her glass down. The ice settled. But in a small town, right and wrong don't matter. Half as much as who tells the story first. Rick told it first. He told Pastor Jenkins that I was unstable. Emotional, making things up. And people believed him because believing Rick was easy. Believing that good old Rick Quinn was a liar. That would mean the whole town had been fooled. And nobody wants to believe they've been fooled. The ceiling fan ticked. Patsy Cline sang about falling to pieces. Nate will do the same thing, I said. Darla looked at me over her glasses. Honey, Nate already has. Why do you think the women at Walmart look through you? Like you were glass. He called Pastor Jenkins. The morning after that post went up. He told him it was a joke. That Brooke was an old friend acting silly. That you were having a hard time with the new baby. And reading too much into things. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. He told them I was crazy. He told them you were struggling. Which sounds nicer and means the same thing. The shop was quiet. Except for the fan and the radio. And the sound of my own breathing. Which I was trying very hard to keep steady. So what do I do? Darla leaned forward. Her voice dropped, not softer but denser. The way someone talks. When they want you to remember every word. You've got to. You go quiet, you forgive. You let it pass. And Nate keeps doing exactly what he's doing. Because nothing stopped him. 2. You fight. But if you fight smart. No screaming, no scenes. No crying in the Walmart parking lot, where someone can put it on their Facebook. You collect evidence. You hire a lawyer and you choose your moment. I looked around the shop. The dresses on the rack. The price tags and someone else's handwriting. The apartment upstairs where Darla lived. Alone with her cat and her radio. This woman had walked the road I was standing at the start of. And it had cost her everything. She must have seen it in my face. Because she leaned back and crossed her arms and said, "You're looking at me and you're scared. That's fair, but you want to know something. I sleep through the night now. Every night, first time in my whole adult life." She reached under the counter and pulled out a sticky note. Wrote a name and a phone number in that same blue. Gina Harmon, attorney, out of Albany. Not Valdosta. In Valdosta everybody knows everybody. And everybody owes Nate Tatum a favor for fixing their car. I took the note, folded it, put it in my pocket next to her business card. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me yet." She said, "Thank me when it's over." That week I started collecting. Gina Harmon's office was in a strip mall off Oglethorpe Boulevard in Albany, 45 minutes from Valdosta. Far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone from church. In the waiting room. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 38, dark hair pulled back, no nonsense. A legal pad already open. When I sat down, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she gave me a list. Not comfort, not sympathy. A list first. She said, "Log in to your joint bank account. Go to statements. Download everything from the last 18 months. Flag any transaction you don't recognize." She paused. "Have you ever looked at your bank statements before? Nate handles the money." "Not anymore, he doesn't." I sat at the Valdosta Public Library the next afternoon. Emma asleep in her stroller beside me. And I logged into our checking account. For the first time since we'd opened it. My hands were shaking. I didn't know the balance. I didn't even know what I expected to find. What I found was a pattern. Every Thursday, Airbnb. 45 minutes south in Moultrie. Close enough to drive. Far enough that nobody from Valdosta would be eating at the same restaurant. Dinner charges at a steakhouse in Moultrie. Always for two. Always between 7 and 9 in the evening. And a charge at K Jewelers from 6 weeks ago. $280. For a necklace I had never seen and never received. I showed the listing agreement to Darla that same week. She spread it on her counter next to the sewing machine. And ran her finger down the page. Darla had bought and sold property. During her divorce from Rick. She knew what a listing agreement looked like. Here she said, tapping the broker line. Brooke Kessler Homes. 6% commission on a sale price of $750,000. That's $45,000 in Brooke's pocket. She looked up at me. She's not just sleeping with your husband, Riley. She's getting paid for it. The land was 3 acres on the new commercial corridor. South of town. It had been in Nate's family. Since his grandfather bought it in the 70s. Nate had asked me to sign the paperwork. Like it was a phone bill. Insurance authorization, he'd called it insurance. I kept scrolling through the baby monitor. Recordings at night after Nate fell asleep. Earbuds in volume low. 2 months of audio. Every time I'd left him alone with Emma. He'd been on the phone with Brooke. Some calls were 15 minutes, some were 45. On one recording from a Tuesday in November, Emma cried for nearly 8 minutes straight. I could hear her through the speaker. That high thin wail she makes when she's scared. Not hungry, scared. And Nate's voice under it. Talking to Brooke about a fishing trip. Not even pausing. Midweek, Brooke deleted the Instagram post, gone. The photo, the caption, the comments. All of it scrubbed clean. But I had the screenshots. I had the screen recordings. I had timestamps that proved the post had been live for 6 days before she took it down. Deleting it didn't erase anything. It just proved she knew it was wrong. And through all of it, I went home every night and cooked supper, and set the table, and asked Nate about his day at the shop. He'd tell me about the Chevy with the bad alternator, or the Ford that needed a new transmission, and I'd nod and pass the cornbread, and wipe Emma's chin, and smile when he kissed her forehead. I was learning something about myself that week. I could hold two truths at the same time, without cracking. The truth of what I knew, and the performance of not knowing it. And the performance was so good that Nate never once looked at me sideways. I was starting to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. I was starting to feel like I had ground under my feet. That Sunday Nate wanted us to go to church. I hadn't been since the post went up. 2 weeks of skipped services that Nate had explained away to Pastor Jenkins as Emma having an ear infection. But this Sunday, he laid my floral dress on the bed and said, "Time to get back to it, darling. People are starting to talk." People had been talking since the night Brooke pressed post. But I didn't say that. I put on the dress. I put Emma in her white shoes. I sat in the truck beside Nate and watched him drive with one hand on the wheel and the other on the gear shift, humming along with the gospel station. And I did not let a single thing show on my face. First Baptist smelled the way it always did. Old hymnals and lemon oil. And the wood polish they used on the pews. Sunlight through the stained glass made colored squares on the carpet. The ceiling fans turned slow. And the organ played something soft. And Nate walked us down the center aisle shaking hands, clapping shoulders. Morning Pastor. Morning Deacon Kessler. Good to be back. He guided us into a pew. 3rd row. And the Kessler family was already seated in the 2nd. Brooke turned around. White sundress, blonde hair blown out. Perfect teeth bright enough to sell toothpaste. She looked at Emma in my arms. And her face broke into a smile so warm. You'd think she'd been waiting all morning just to see my baby. Oh my gosh, look at her. She's gotten so big. Riley, you should come to our Wednesday mom group. We meet at the yoga studio on Patterson Street. I held Emma tighter. This woman had posted a photo of herself in bed with my husband. 10 days ago she'd written, "You were just the replacement," under it, like a caption on a vacation photo. And now she was inviting me to mom group. "I'm fine," I said. "Thanks," though Brooke leaned closer. I could smell her shampoo. Something coconut, something expensive. "Seriously babe, you look exhausted. Nate needs to help more with the baby." Nate heard that. He looked over and for 1 second. Less than a second his face lost all its color. Then the smile slid back on like a mask. "She's right, you know, I gotta step up. Riley works too hard." I sat through the sermon. I don't remember a word of it. I remember Brooke's perfume. And the back of Deacon Kessler's head. Silver hair combed neat. And the sound of 200 people singing "How Great Thou Art," while I held my daughter and stared at the stained glass window above the 18 Alpha after service. I took Emma to the bathroom to change her diaper. When I came back through the side door to the parking lot, I saw them. Nate and Brooke standing beside her white Lexus. They didn't see me. I was behind the brick column near the fellowship hall. Emma on my hip, half hidden by the azalea bushes that the garden committee had planted last spring. Nate reached out and took Brooke's hand. Just for a moment. 2 seconds, then he let go. Brooke laughed low and private. And put her hand flat on his chest. "See you Thursday, babe," she said. 10 yards away, Deacon Warren Kessler stood. With his car keys in his hand. He was facing them. He saw everything. The hand, the laugh. The word babe. In the church parking lot on a Sunday morning. He turned and walked to his car. I stood behind that column, with my daughter's cheek against my shoulder, and I watched Brooke's father walk away from something he had clearly seen before. He knew he had always known, and he'd chosen silence because Brooke was his daughter, and Nate was a member of his church, and the truth would burn down everything the Kessler name had built in this town. This was the place where Nate and I got married, the courtyard with the dogwood tree, where we took our photos, the baptismal font, where Pastor Jenkins poured water over Emma's head and said her name. It was supposed to be the one safe place. Instead it was a stage, and everyone knew their lines except me. I buckled Emma into her car seat. She grabbed my finger and babbled something that sounded almost like a word. I kissed her hand. I got in the driver's seat, because Nate was still inside, talking to someone, probably building his alibi for Thursday. And I sat there, in the parking lot of First Baptist Church, with the engine off and the windows up, and I opened Facebook on my phone. Not my profile. The ads manager. I'd used it once 2 years ago to boost a post for the school bake sale. I still remembered how it worked. You pick your audience. You pick your radius. You pick your budget and the algorithm does the rest. I typed in the zip code. Valdosta 15-mile radius. Interests First Baptist Church Valdosta. I stared at the screen. I didn't press anything. Not yet, but I knew the zip code. And I knew exactly who needed to see what. I'd been carrying alone for 2 weeks. I didn't do it from home. I wasn't stupid. I drove to the Valdosta Public Library on Monday evening. Emma strapped in her car seat, and I dropped her off at Darla's apartment, above the shop, because what I was about to do was not something I wanted my daughter in the room for, even if she was too young to understand. Darla took Emma without a word. She just held the door open and looked at me and said, "Go, the library closed at 8. I had 40 minutes. I sat at a computer in the back corner, near the reference section, where nobody went, and I created a Facebook page. No profile picture, no personal information. Just a name. Valdosta deserves the truth." Then I uploaded everything. The screenshots of Brooke's Instagram post, time-stamped before she'd scrubbed it. The listing agreement, with Brooke's name in broker's ink, and Nate's signature at the bottom. The bank statements I'd highlighted on Gina's advice. Every Airbnb booking, every steakhouse dinner in Moultrie, every charge at K Jewelers for jewelry I'd never worn. I set the Valdosta, Georgia 15-mile radius. Interests First Baptist Church Valdosta. Tatum Auto Repair. Brooke Kessler Homes. The budget screen blinked at me. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I'd kept in an old wallet at the bottom of my closet for 2 years. Every time I'd gotten change back from groceries, every time Nate had left a 5 on the counter and forgotten about it, every loose bill from the cup holder in the truck that he never counted, I'd folded it up and tucked it away. $214. It was the only money in the world that belonged to me, and nobody else. I typed in 200. My finger hovered over the confirm button, not because I was afraid of Nate, because that $200 was my emergency fund, my last resort. The money I'd been saving in case everything fell apart, and I was about to spend it on making everything fall apart. On purpose I pressed confirm. I pressed publish. The page went live at 7:23 on a Monday evening in January. I drove back to Darla's, picked up Emma, drove home. Nate was already asleep. The TV on in the living room. A beer can on the end table. I carried Emma to her crib, changed into sweatpants and lay down beside my husband. The baby monitor app pulsed green on my nightstand. By morning the ads had reached over 1,000 people. By lunch 340 had clicked. 89 had shared. I know because I checked the numbers. In the staff bathroom at school. Sitting on the toilet lid with my phone in both hands. Refreshing the page every 30 seconds. Valdosta was burning and I had lit the match. The front door hit the wall hard. Enough to rattle the picture frames. I was in the kitchen. Emma in her high chair. A jar of sweet potatoes open on the counter. A tiny spoon in my hand. It was Tuesday a little after 4. Nate was supposed to be at the shop until 6. He stood in the doorway with his phone in his fist. And his face the color of raw hamburger. Grease on his forearms. He hadn't washed up. He hadn't changed. He'd driven straight from the shop. And he was breathing through his nose. Like something caged. Emma startled. Her face crumpled. And she let out a wail. The sudden sharp kind that meant she was scared. Not hungry. What the hell is this, Riley? He threw his phone onto the kitchen table. It spun across the surface. And stopped against the salt shaker. The screen showed the Facebook page. Valdosta deserves the truth. Someone from the congregation had forwarded it to him. Maybe several someones. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. I wiped sweet potato off Emma's chin. My hand was steady. I was surprised by that. Don't you dare play dumb with me. His voice filled the kitchen. Emma cried harder. He didn't look at her. Valdosta deserves the truth. Who else would make that page? Who? If it's not true, I said, report it. Facebook takes down false information. File a report. He went quiet 2 seconds. 3 because he couldn't report it. Every screenshot was real. Every bank statement was accurate. Every word on that page was the truth. And he knew it and I knew it. And now 1,200 people in a 15-mile radius knew it too. You're destroying this family. His voice dropped. The anger drained out and something else came in. Something softer, something practiced. His eyes went wet. Riley, I know I messed up. I know, but you think this helps. Our daughter is going to grow up and read this someday. You want that. You want Emma to see her parents' business. All over Facebook. I looked at Emma. 18 months old. Sweet potato on her nose. Banging her spoon on the high chair tray. She didn't understand a word. But Nate was right about one thing the internet doesn't. What I'd posted would exist somewhere forever. In a screenshot. In a cached page in someone's saved folder. And for 1 second. Just one. I almost reached for my phone to take it all down. Then my phone buzzed. Gina Harmon's name on the screen. Excuse me, I said to Nate, and I stepped into the hallway. Gina's voice was clipped. Riley Deacon. Warren Kessler contacted an attorney this afternoon. They're preparing a defamation claim against you. On Brooke's behalf. And your husband filed an emergency custody motion. About an hour ago. He's claiming you're mentally unstable. And a danger to your child. The hallway was narrow. The light overhead flickered. The way it always did. Because Nate kept promising to fix it and never did. I pressed my back against the wall. And held the phone to my ear. And the words came through one at a time. Each one landing separate. Emergency custody. Mentally unstable. He filed before he came home, I said, looks like it. The motion was stamped at 3:15. He walked into the house. Knowing exactly what he was going to do. I looked back through the doorway into the kitchen. Nate was leaning against the counter now. Arms crossed watching me. And I understood. The shouting, the tears, the soft voice. The guilt about Emma. All of it had been choreographed. He'd called his lawyer first, filed the papers second. Then he'd come home and perform the scene. The angry husband confronting the crazy wife. Because he needed me on tape. He needed me screaming or crying. Or grabbing or breaking something. Anything that would sound unhinged on a recording. I looked at his chest. His flannel shirt, the one with the breast pocket. The pocket where his phone sat, screen facing out. I could see the edge of it glowing. The red bar of a recording app pulsing at the top. He was recording me right now. He'd been recording me since he walked through the door. I hung up with Gina. I walked back into the kitchen. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. Riley Nate's tone shifted again. Gentler now, the voice you'd use on a sick animal. I think I should take Emma to my folks' place tonight. Just for a night or two until things settle down. He lifted Emma from the high chair. She reached for me. Her arms stretched over his shoulder. Fingers opening and closing. And she said the only words she'd learned to say. Clearly, Mama. I stepped forward one step too. My hands came up and every cell in my body screamed. Take her, grab her. Do not let him walk out that door with your baby. But the phone in his pocket was recording. The custody motion was filed. If I lunged for Emma, if I screamed, if I so much as raised my voice, he'd have exactly what he needed. Audio of an unhinged mother fighting over a child. Evidence for the judge. I stopped 2 steps from my daughter. Close enough to smell the sweet potatoes on her breath. I bit the inside of my lip until I tasted iron. I stood still. I watched Nate carry Emma through the living room. And out the front door. I heard the truck door open, the car seat buckle. Click, the door shut. The engine starting, gravel under the tires. And then nothing. Just the house, just me. Just the jar of sweet potatoes. Still open on the counter. And the tiny spoon. On the floor where Emma had dropped it. I picked up the spoon. I washed it. I washed Emma's bowl. I washed the pot from last night. I washed everything in the sink, one dish at a time. Because my hands needed something to hold. That wasn't a phone. When the sink was empty, I drove to Second Chances. The shop was dark, but the light above was on. I climbed the stairs, the old wood creaking under me. And I knocked. Darla opened the door. She looked at my face. And she didn't ask a single question. She just stepped aside. Her apartment was small. A sofa with a quilt over the armrest. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. A bookshelf full of paperbacks. It smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long. And the lavender sachets she kept in her dresser drawers. A tabby cat slept on the windowsill. I sat on the couch. I didn't talk for a long time. Darla sat across from me in the armchair. And waited. The way only a woman who has been in that exact chair can wait. Without fidgeting, without filling the silence. He took Emma, I said. My voice came out flat like reporting the weather. Filed a custody motion, says I'm mentally unstable. Darla's face changed. Not pity, something older, recognition. She was looking at me. But she was seeing 7 years ago. Rick did the same thing to me. She said, barely above a whisper. Took our son to his mother's house on a Wednesday. Told the court I needed time to recover. Judge gave him temporary custody. Temporary turned into 6 months. 6 months turned into permanent. The cat shifted on the windowsill. The radiator ticked. Was I wrong, I said. The ads, was that wrong? Darla didn't answer that. Instead she said, why did you run those ads, Riley? Tell me the truth. Was it to punish him or was it to be believed? I opened my mouth to say something quick. Something that sounded brave and righteous. But what came out was the truth. And it was smaller than I wanted it to be. I wanted someone to believe me. The whole town was looking at me. Like I was making it up. Nate told everyone I was unstable. Brooke invited me to mom group like nothing happened. The deacon watched them hold hands and walked away. I just needed one person. Any person to say I wasn't crazy. I said it, Gina said it. That wasn't enough, no it wasn't. And sitting on Darla's couch. In a dark apartment above a consignment shop. That admission cost me something I couldn't name. You know what my biggest mistake was? Darla leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. I fought Rick for my pride. I wanted the town to see that I was right. And he was wrong. I wanted vindication. I spent every dollar and every hour making sure people knew the truth about Rick Quinn. She paused, and my son grew up in his father's house. The room was very quiet. Ads Riley. Public shaming the whole town knowing that's ego. It feeds something but it doesn't protect anything. She pointed at me. Your daughter. That's the real battlefield. Not Facebook, not the congregation, the courthouse. I looked at my phone. The Facebook page was still live. Over 2,000 people had seen it now. 500 comments, shares I'd lost count of. And I was sitting here without my daughter. Without my house. Without a single thing the ads had promised to give me. I need to call Gina, I said. I need to focus on custody. Yes you do, Darla nodded. And you've got something I didn't have 7 years ago. What, that baby monitor app? Those recordings of Nate. On the phone with his girlfriend. While Emma cried in her crib. That's not a Facebook post, Riley. That's not public opinion. That's evidence. That's a courtroom. That's a judge hearing a father say, ignore it about his own daughter. I looked at Darla. 44 years old, living alone. Above a shop full of other people's old clothes. Her son grown and half a stranger. She'd walked this road and lost. She was telling me how not to. For 3 weeks. I'd been waiting for someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Waiting for the town, waiting for the ads to do it. Waiting for strangers on Facebook. To validate what I already knew. I didn't need them. I didn't need any of them. What I knew. And what I had on that phone. Was going to speak in a room where Nate's charm. And Deacon Kessler's reputation. And the whole congregation's willful blindness. Meant exactly nothing. I stood up, I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Can I use your bathroom down the hall? I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. A 27-year-old woman with dark circles and wet cheeks. And a jaw set so tight. My teeth ached. I didn't look like someone who had it together. I looked like someone who had been taken apart. And was deciding right now which pieces to keep. I walked back out. I picked up my phone. I called Gina Harmon. I'm taking down the ads, I said. And I need a hearing date as soon as you can get one. I sat across from Gina Harmon. On a Wednesday morning in Albany. Rain hit the window of her office in heavy sheets, blurring the traffic on Oglethorpe Boulevard. My phone was dark in my pocket. The Facebook page was gone. I had deleted it the night before. Exactly like I told her I would. Gina laid a manila folder open on her desk. She did not offer me coffee. She did not ask how I was sleeping. She tapped the stack of papers with a silver pen. We have 4 weapons, Gina said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the sound of the rain. Against the glass. She slid the first piece of paper across the desk. It was a printed spreadsheet of my bank statements. With bright yellow highlighter marking specific rows. $12,000. That is what your husband spent on overnight rentals, dinners at steakhouses, and jewelry over the last 18 months. That is marital money. The court calls it dissipation of assets. They will deduct every penny of it. From his side of the settlement. I looked at the numbers. 12,000. I had clipped grocery coupons to save 50 cents. On diapers. I had worn the same pair of maternity jeans for a year. Because we were saving for Emma's college fund. Gina slid the next page forward. Printed screenshots of Brooke Kessler's Instagram post. Defamation claims require false statements. Gina said, leaning back in her chair. Truth is an absolute defense in the state of Georgia. You posted facts backed by time-stamped evidence. Their lawsuit is a scare tactic. It is dead on arrival. She pulled out a third document. The listing agreement. Nate had tried to get me to sign in our kitchen. 3 acres of commercial land, $750,000. Your husband tried to sell marital property through his mistress and give her a 6% commission. That is a massive conflict of interest. More importantly, it requires your signature. You didn't sign it, did you? No, I said. He told me it was an insurance form. I left it on the counter. Good, the contract is void. Gina closed the folder and rested her hands on top of it. But none of that gets you custody. She reached for her computer mouse and clicked once. The Owlet baby monitor application opened on her screen. This does, she said softly. This audio file is not proof of an affair. It is proof of neglect. A Guardian ad. Lightem will listen to a father ignore his crying 18-month-old child to talk to his girlfriend. And they will not care how many cars he fixes for free. At his church. I stared at the computer screen. The waveform of the audio file looked like a jagged mountain range. I did not need the town to believe me anymore. I just needed the judge. 2 weeks later. The Lowndes County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. The hearing room was small and suffocating. There was no jury box, no gallery of spectators. Just a heavy oak table. Buzzing fluorescent lights. And the hum of an air conditioner. Working too hard for a Monday morning in February. I wore a white button-down shirt and black slacks. No jewelry, no heavy makeup. I sat beside Gina. And kept my hands folded in my lap. So no one could see my fingers shaking. Nate sat at the other end of the long table. He wore his Sunday suit. Navy blue with a crisp white shirt and a solid tie. He looked like the good guy. He looked like the man who carried groceries for old women and organized the church softball league. His lawyer, Preston Whitefield, sat next to him unpacking a leather briefcase. Preston played golf with Deacon Kessler on the weekends. I glanced over my shoulder. The back row of the small room was not empty. Deacon Warren Kessler sat there, hands resting heavily on a wooden cane. His wife sat beside him, and next to her was Brooke. Brooke wore a pale pink blazer and a tight skirt. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe knot. She did not meet my eyes. She looked down at her lap, her thumb picking frantically at her cuticle. The judge entered. A woman in her late 50s, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a dark robe. We all stood, we sat. The air in the room grew thick. Preston Whitefield spoke first. His voice filled the space, smooth and practiced. He talked about my mental state. He told the judge I had launched an unhinged social media campaign to smear a pillar of the community. He used words like unstable and vindictive. He asked the court to mandate a psychiatric evaluation before I could be trusted with. My daughter Nate looked down at the table, his face a picture of deep, reluctant sorrow. He shook his head slowly, like a man broken by his wife's tragic decline. It was a beautiful performance. 2 weeks ago it would have shattered me. Gina stood up. Your Honor, I have 3 exhibits. She handed over the printed screenshots. The judge adjusted her glasses and read the caption. You were just the replacement. Nate's jaw tightened. The sorrow on his face slipped. Just for a fraction of a second. Replaced by something hard and cold. Gina submitted the bank statements next. $12,000 in marital funds spent on a hidden relationship. Preston objected loudly. The judge overruled him. Without looking up from the paper. Then Gina placed a small, black Bluetooth speaker on the center of the table. Exhibit C. Gina said, audio from the minor child's bedroom. Preston Whitfield stood up so fast. His chair scraped loudly against the linoleum floor. Objection, foundation. There is no way to authenticate the origin of this recording. Your Honor. Gina did not blink. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is an audio file, extracted directly from the Outlet application. It is a baby monitor, installed legally on my client's phone, with the mutual consent of both parents, for the safety of their 18-month-old daughter. The recording took place in the child's bedroom, inside the marital home. I have provided the metadata, time stamps, and the application logs to verify its authenticity. The judge looked at the paperwork in front of her. She looked at Preston, overruled. "Play it." Gina pressed the button on her laptop keyboard. The room went completely silent. And then Nate's voice filled the courthouse. "Yeah, she just went down. We've got all night." Brooke shifted in the back row. Her wooden chair squeaked. The audio crackled. Then came the sound of Emma crying. That high, thin wail she makes when she is frightened in the dark. My chest physically ached hearing it. My nails dug into my palms. The crying went on through the speaker. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Nate's voice came through the speaker again. Low and annoyed. "Yeah, she's just fussy. Ignore it." "So where were we, baby? Ignore it." The judge slowly lowered the file folder in her hands. She took off her glasses. She looked directly at Nate. The expression on her face was not legal or professional. It was maternal, and it was pure disgust. Nate sat frozen. He stared at the speaker like it was a snake, preparing to strike. He had no defense. He could not say, "I manipulated the audio." It was his voice. His words, his failure echoing off the courtroom walls. Preston Whitfield cleared his throat, his face pale. "Your Honor, we request a brief recess." The judge banged her gavel. 15 minutes. I walked out into the hallway to get a drink of water from the fountain. The corridor was lined with marble benches and tall windows. As I rounded the corner toward the restrooms, I saw them. Nate stood against the wall. Deacon Kessler stood directly in front of him, leaning heavily on his cane, his face purple with rage. I slowed my steps. "I listened, you absolute idiot," the deacon hissed. His voice echoed off the tile floor. "I told you to be careful. I told you to keep it clean. Until the paperwork was filed. And the money cleared. Now this audio is going to tank the entire land deal." Nate opened his mouth, holding his hands up. But the older man cut him off. "You embarrassed this family. You embarrassed my church, and you lost the developer." I kept walking. I did not stop. I realized it right then with perfect clarity. Deacon Kessler had never been protecting Brooke. He did not care about his daughter's heart, or her reputation, or her soul. He cared about the commercial development. He cared about the massive commission and the church building fund. They were all using each other, trapped in a web of their own greed. We went back into the room. The judge did not waste time. She granted me full temporary custody of Emma. Nate was allowed supervised visitation every other weekend at a designated facility. The defamation claim was dismissed entirely. The divorce proceedings would move forward with the dissipation of assets officially noted for the final settlement. I walked out of the courthouse, and the bright February sun hit my face. I breathed in. The air tasted incredibly clean. My new apartment had 1 bedroom. It sat on a quiet street, behind a grocery store, a part of Valdosta, where nobody knew my name, and nobody cared what time I came home. I bought a cheap metal clothing rack for my shirts. I pushed Emma's crib into the corner of the bedroom, and hung a string of yellow paper stars above it. The refrigerator had a deep dent in the door, and the kitchen sink dripped, if you didn't pull the handle all the way to the right. But it was mine. Every morning I made coffee. I poured 1 cup just for me. No one asked me to iron their shirt. No one told me I was crazy for noticing the perfume on their collar. I sat at a small round table in the kitchen. The table had exactly 2 chairs. 1 for me and 1 for Emma. My phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up. A text message from Darla. "Can you come help me sort a new box of donations today?" I smiled and typed back, "Be there at 10:00. I opened my email next. My inbox was quiet. These days the town had moved on to other gossip. Mostly because the Kessler empire had cracked down the middle. Brooke lost her real estate license last week. The state board revoked it after the conflict of interest with the listing agreement came to light. Deacon Kessler quietly stepped down from his leadership role at First Baptist, citing health reasons. The Atlanta developer backed out of the land deal completely, and Nate kept his auto shop open, but the service bays were mostly empty. Half the congregation had taken their business to a mechanic in the next county over. I closed my email and opened an application with a sterile white icon, Our Family Wizard. The court mandated we use it for all communication regarding Emma. No text messages, no phone calls. Every single word was logged on a server for the judge to see. There was a message from Nate sent 5 days ago. The font was black and plain. Can we talk? I miss our family. I read the words. I felt the smooth glass of the phone screen under my thumb. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the urge to run to the library and post it on the internet so people would pity me. I just felt tired. I closed the application without typing a single letter. I had absolutely nothing left to say to him. I finished my coffee and dressed Emma in a yellow sweater. We drove to downtown Valdosta and parked in front of Second Chances. The bell jangled cheerfully when I pushed the door open. Darla was standing near the window, hanging a green velvet dress on the display rack. She wore her reading glasses on a silver chain, and her hair was pinned up with a wooden clip. She turned and smiled. There she is. I set Emma down on the hardwood floor. Emma immediately ran toward a low shelf of old toys, her little shoes slapping against the wood. She pointed at a stuffed animal with a missing button. I bear, Emma said loudly. Bear. Darla laughed. She picked up the bear and handed it to my daughter. That one is free of charge for the princess. I leaned against the wooden counter. I watched Emma hug the worn-out bear to her chest and run in circles around a rack of winter coats. For the first time since the night I found that photo on Instagram, I wasn't asking myself if I was making a mistake. I wasn't wondering if the town would forgive me, or if the church ladies would whisper about me in the checkout line. I wasn't trying to figure out how to be a good wife. I watched my daughter laugh, safe and warm, in a room that smelled like cedar and beeswax. I looked at my own hands resting on the counter, steady and strong. I realized I was already doing it. I was building a life from scratch, and I was standing entirely on my own. And that was enough. The bell above the heavy wooden door of Second Chances jangled again. The sound was sharp in the quiet afternoon air. I looked up from the wooden counter, where Darla was folding vintage scarves. A woman walked in. She pushed a double stroller, with a sleeping toddler on one side, and an infant car seat on the other. She wore black yoga pants and a grey, hooded sweatshirt that was 2 sizes too big. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy knot, but it was her eyes that caught my attention. They were wide, red-rimmed and completely exhausted. She had the exact look of a deer, trapped in the headlights of a very fast truck, on a dark Georgia highway. She did not look at Darla. She did not look at me. She pushed the stroller straight toward the back corner of the shop, where we kept the discounted baby clothes. I watched her hands tremble as she picked up a tiny denim jacket. She wasn't looking at the price tag. She was just staring at the blue fabric, her chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. Darla stepped out from behind the register. She held a stack of folded jeans. She looked at the woman in the corner. Then she looked at me. Darla did not say a single word. She just raised her eyebrows and gave me a slow, knowing nod. I understood. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I walked out from behind the counter. I didn't ask her if she was okay. Women in Valdosta always asked if you were okay, when they really just wanted to hear the neighborhood gossip over their Sunday casseroles. I knew exactly how that trap worked. I stopped beside the clothing rack. I kept my voice soft. That is a good jacket. My daughter has one almost exactly like it. She stains it with sweet potatoes every Tuesday. The woman kept her eyes on the denim. A single tear rolled down her cheek and hit the collar of the tiny jacket. My husband bought this brand for our son, she whispered. Her voice cracked dry and brittle. He bought it yesterday, right before I found the second cell phone, hidden inside his golf bag. She closed her eyes. Her shoulders shook violently. She was standing exactly where I had stood. Her entire world had just collapsed, and she was trying to figure out how to breathe. Underneath the heavy rubble, I reached into my front pocket. I pulled out a small cream-colored rectangular card. It was the business card for Gina Harmon. I slid the card onto the rack, right next to the woman's trembling hand. I stood exactly where you are standing right now. I told her 6 months ago in this exact shop. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought my life was over. The woman finally turned her head. She looked at the card, then she looked at me. It wasn't over, I said. It was just beginning. It is going to be terrifying. People you trusted are going to look the other way to protect their own reputations. You are going to lose sleep, but you are going to find out exactly what kind of steel you have in your spine. I pointed toward the front counter. We have cold sweet tea in the back. Come sit down. We can talk about the very next step. The woman looked at her sleeping children. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She picked up the business card and held it tight in her fist. Then she nodded. I walked her toward the counter. I watched her sit down in the same wooden chair I had occupied all those months ago. I poured the tea. The ice cracked sharply against the glass. I realized something clear and true as I handed her the cold drink. The healing didn't come from winning a custody battle in a county courthouse. It didn't come from seeing Nate's auto shop empty or watching the Kessler family lose their country club status. It came from this. It came from turning around and pulling the next drowning woman out of the dark water. I survived because someone left a heavy wooden door open for me. Now I was the one holding that door open. It takes a very long time to unlearn the quiet lies a small southern town teaches you. You learn to smile through your teeth and keep quiet. You learn to protect the neighborhood peace, even when that peace is suffocating you. But the bravest thing a woman can ever do is stand up and walk away from a table where respect is no longer being served. I know I am not the only one. I know a woman is sitting in a dark bedroom right now, holding a glowing phone, wondering if the heavy knot in her stomach is real, or if she is just imagining things. You are not imagining anything. You are not alone. And you absolutely do not have to stay. What was the exact moment you finally knew the truth? What was the final straw that made you pack your bags and choose yourself? Share your story with me down below. Let us build a brand new congregation right here. One where nobody ever has to lie.